Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weed from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a game, the likes of which I really feel like we haven't seen from the Jets since maybe the second half of the season 3 seasons ago, the first year of the Rick Bowness regime that came in, where the Jets kind of fell off and, you had those kind of, okay, everyone knows about Rennie's take in the past about how go way back to 2018 and the Vegas Golden Knights, I thought, broke at that time the MTS Center, right? Like that just kind of made it so it was very, very vulnerable and fragile, and the other team scored and suddenly the building got really quiet. That seemed to have gone away in the last number of years. And I think one of the reasons that was the Winnipeg Jets, and that just kind of always that stick-to-itiveness that I've talked about it in the past, that feeling of inevitability. It's easy to cheer when you feel like inevitably things are going to turn out in your direction. That hasn't been happening. This game, kind of a perfect example of that, and a good topic for us to kick off as we hop in the Toyota and take the opening drive, the Jim Pattison Toyota on Region opening drive for this show here. A 3-0 loss against a team that the Jets have just owned for a really long time. And it kind of felt like this was a little bit of anyone watched the movie Freaky Friday? I can't remember what the one was. Back in our day, there was the Kirk Cameron with what was that guy's name? Dudley Moore movie. There's been a whole bunch of them where people kind of switch places. Felt like that. I felt like that. What we were seeing on the ice here tonight was the Winnipeg Jets, kind of flip-flopped and assumed the form of the Minnesota Wild, and then what used to be the Minnesota Wild became the Winnipeg Jets on this night. You've got this team that comes in and basically plays the perfect road game. I mean, how much more perfect a road game could that be if you are the visiting team on this night? Like, not only do you score first, which I think it's 11 straight games now that team has scored first. Not only do you score first, not only do you limit things greatly for the Winnipeg Jets in the process, but you kind of take the crowd out of it and never really give them the opportunity to get back into it. And it's because they played the game very similar to what we saw the Winnipeg Jets doing against teams in years past. They didn't give teams a lot, did a really good job of kind of challenging and shutting things down in their own zone. They had great goaltending on this night. It's pretty obvious that the Minnesota Wild walk away with the Sean Reynolds Award on this night. Not that I thought it was a bad game for Eric Comrie, but just, there was brilliance on one side. And part of that would have to do that I think that there was just more challenging. The degree of difficulty was higher for Eric Comrie on this night. And you'll hear that from the Jets head coach, who seems very, very kind of upset about the lack of consistency, which to me was a real strong theme in the post game today. Dylan DeMello bringing it up. I think the Jets really liked their first period, and then after that, they kind of start to like the game less and less. Talk from Scott Arniel about how this team used to be the kind of team that when things weren't going their way, they'd stick with it, and maybe it would take them 58 minutes to get back into that game and tie it up. But you got to do the right things on the way through those 58 minutes. You just got to keep going through those 58 minutes and do the right things over and over and over again. And his belief the Winnipeg Jets aren't necessarily doing that. And I'll tell you this, the third goal of that game is the kind of goal you really didn't see scored against the Winnipeg Jets in years past. They are, again, I don't agree with Ken's assertion that they're playing terrible defensively. And I don't know if that's the word he used. So I'll take that back because I don't want to put words in his mouth. But Ken definitely thinking that they were poor defensively. I don't think they've been poor. I'll go and I'll say it again. This is what typical NHL teams look like, is that you give up some key chances throughout a game that end up in the back of your net that the Jets just did not give up over the last number of years as they clamp things down defensively. And you're starting to see those things happen. The thing is, what a lot of the other teams do is they balance that with scoring on the other side of things. Here's why I think it's not working for the Jets. Here's one of the things, I've touched on this. This may not be entirely new for you to hear, but you may ask yourself, well, why if the Winnipeg Jets are giving up more chances than they did in years past, which Ken definitely alluded to. I don't think it's as bad as Ken makes it sound defensively, but I've said this, there's no doubt about it. The Winnipeg Jets are not defending to the degree that they did last season. So you may ask yourself, well, why doesn't it just switch into the Jets allow a little bit more in the way of chances, and then they just go down and they score like other teams do? Like I've seen this, I talked about earlier in the year, the Montreal Canadiens at times outscoring their defensive woes, right? Or their defensive breakdowns. It's a different style of things. A lot of other teams out there are okay with and willing to trade chances. The Jets abandoned that a long time ago. And if they do get to that, what it would mean is an entire abandonment of the system that the Jets are trying to play, which I don't think the Jets fans would like where that would end up taking the team. But it's definitely something that the Jets coaches and coaching staff are not okay with. They want this to look like it did in years past. They want their offense to look like it did in years past. And what did the Winnipeg Jets offense look like? It looked like when Rick Bowness first showed up, there was a bit of a tear down. And you'll go back and look at the stats. Guys like Connor, guys like Mark Scheifele, they produced less points at that time as they learned this system that was all about prioritizing defense and then building offense off of that defense. That's what's made this team great over the last number of years. That's what this team has got to, where you get guys like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Gabe Vilardi, and the list goes on and on and on of players who are doing very good offensively and not giving up anything defensively because they found a way to create opportunities off their defense. You saw it earlier in the year. We talked about it. Think of Morgan Barron in Philadelphia, where they get in front of the puck, stop the puck, instantaneously attack, head down the ice, and boom, it's in the back of the net. That's what the Winnipeg Jets offense is supposed to look like. But the Jets defense hasn't looked what it's supposed to look like this year. It's been off. It hasn't quite been there. It's been talked about how inconsistent it is. And the problem with that is when the Jets defense goes out the window, so too does the type of offense it scores. There's no fluke here, ladies and gentlemen, that the Winnipeg Jets have been shut out 3 times this year. And that's just a symptom of the defense not working, because this defense is designed to get the puck back. How many times have you heard this? How many times have we talked about it over the years? The Winnipeg Jets are the team that gets the puck back as quickly as possible so they can go back on the attack. Good defense leads to good offense. So when the defense isn't quite there in the system, I've said it before, the team is not on time like they were in years past. And when you're not on time, you're out of place. And now you're not defending well. When you're not defending well, you don't get the puck back as much. Tonight is just an absolute perfect example of that. They're as good a job as I think they do hanging with a really good team right now. Minnesota Wild are a really great team right now, and the Winnipeg Jets did a good job hanging with them. Eventually, it ends up being 3-0 in the game. You know, that's the way that the game goes. But the Jets aren't getting blown out of the water in that game, but it's an even game throughout the vast majority of it, with the other team kind of coming out on top and the Jets getting put into positions they haven't been in for a lot of years, having to chase the game. But the fact of the matter is, the Jets break down defensively. The Jets' inability to get airtight with their defense shows up in a couple of ways. It's the puck going in their net more and more often than it did last year, but it shows up in their inability to produce quality offense, because the Jets built that offense over the last couple of years forcing mistakes from opposing teams, holding on to the puck and not letting the other team have it back. And just by volume of control and control and control, eroding the other team to the point that they would win games, not by fireworks, but by erosion. There is no erosion happening in the Jets game right now. They won early in this season because their top line was absolutely going off. But going back to what I've been saying for a long time and the degree of difficulty, the Winnipeg Jets are capitalizing on teams where the degree of difficulty is lower. They're struggling when the degree of difficulty gets higher. I said it before this homestand. People thought that was contentious. People took issue with it. And yet here we are, the Winnipeg Jets welcoming 3 teams into town, one of them below the playoff line, 2 of them above the playoff line. Guess which of those teams the Winnipeg Jets lost their 2 games against. That is my Toyota opening drive and my thoughts heading into this heading into Ken coming into the show here. Before he does, though, I need to tell you this November, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Finance a 2025 Tacoma truck from 5.69% with up to a 1% loyalty rate reduction and a $1,750 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends December 1st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent and go get yourself a test drive today. All right, time to bring in the man with the best music in the business, folks. Here comes our main man, Kenny. If you pop that off the board there, good to see you. When I do see you, that's some good stuff. Gotta say, not a lot of good looking stuff on the ice there for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. You're looking pretty fine though, of course, because you're a Vittorio Rossi man in a Vittorio Rossi world, especially here in Winnipeg. And if you'd like to be that Vittorio Rossi man, you should want to be that in a Vittorio Rossi world. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corydon Avenue. Walk in loudly, proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, I'd said this. I don't remember seeing a game like this from the Winnipeg Jets where the crowd was as taken out of it, where there was, I talked about the feeling of inevitability that this team had in years past. It felt like the inevitability was working against them in this game. What did you take away from a game against a team that the Jets really have owned for some time now and ended up getting owned tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, having won 9 consecutive games against a team that's hot, the Wild were kind of due in this one, but Jets were kind of undone by their own miscues again, Sean. I mean, mostly sound game in some aspects. Again, the high dangers were heavily tilted in their favor at 5-on-5, but after not giving up a shorthanded goal in the first 19 games, they've now given one up in consecutive games and costly ones. I mean, yesterday it was a game winner on Friday. It was the insurance marker on Sunday. And those are things that just can't happen for a team that prides itself on having an excellent power play. Not just excellent. They had the best power play in the league a year ago. They're a top 6 power play this year. But you just can't be giving up those momentum shifters. And Sean, I know you noticed. I mean, Scott Arniel was not happy about it in the post game, and he was not happy about it in the game. Power play happened. Jets down 2-0, 16 seconds into the third period, and he didn't send his first unit out there. He left the second unit out there. If you and I noticed, and most people in the building noticed, you can be sure that the first unit also noticed. So. Anyways, it's something that, again, I know these things happen sometimes, but That was just an absolutely outstanding play by Marcus Johansson to find Brock Faber as the trailer. But Sean, I mean, that means that Brock Faber's a defenseman. That means he beat at least one forward up the ice and probably two to make it a 3-on-2 to rush in that scenario. And that's something that doesn't sit well with the coaching staff, and it won't sit well with the players. I mean, those are things that, and Sean, I think to your point, I mean, you had asked a couple questions about it in the post game. I mean, I guess maybe if you're used to having the Hart Trophy guy back there, you think, odd man rush, Hellebuyck will handle it. But that's just not something that the Jets can get into habits of doing. I mean, those are situations where the power play has to deliver, and it just didn't do it on this night. And again, the power play had been 6 for 12 going into the game. So I'm not out here saying, oh, well, the Jets power play is obviously costing them games. It's not, but you can't be losing the special teams battle, and you can't be giving up shorties when your team has trouble scoring in a game like this, where Jesper Wallstedt was busy, Sean, but I personally don't know that this is one of the games where, again, the folks at Natural Stat Trick do great work, Sean, but much how I mentioned that redirection goal from Jordan Staal wasn't considered a high danger chance. Today, the Jets had a bunch of chances that were plotted in the home plate area that weren't really great scoring chances because of the shots that were taken. They were unscreened. They were shots that weren't absolute rockets. So for me, again, this is a classic on the deserve to win-o-meter. I think that it was a bit that deserve a win-o-meter today was kind of fool's gold. And again, I don't think that Scott Arniel was standing there saying, look at the numbers and analytics and underlying numbers, should have won this game. Again, the Jets had a strong first period, and not a very good second. And, there just wasn't enough cooking in the third that they had a chance to come back and rally in that game. And it seemed like an inevitability, as you mentioned, that the Wild were going to lock it down. I mean, there have been tons of moments where, the Jets were that team in the past. They get a lead, they're going to lock it down. And today, again, I don't think the Jets gave up by any stretch of the imagination, but they got a little bit of loose again. I mean, the Kaprizov goal, you're just not winning enough battles. I mean, on the first goal by Urov, again, it's bad Z-zone coverage, lost a battle in the corner, and there's a goal. The shorthanded goal is an effort play. It's effort by a defenseman, Brock Faber, beating his man up the ice, and absolute roof daddy wrister to the top shelf. And the third one is Kaprizov, who, Sean, I mean, we talked about it, not dangerous in the game. I mean, that's the thing. If you're the Jets, Kaprizov was not dangerous at all, but he scored an important goal in a game. All right. I mean, it's you barely noticed him in the game, and then there he is, kind of providing the stake to the heart, if you will, in the third period for the Jets. So again, they did some things well, but not enough things well to be beating really, really high end teams. And again, I thought they played well enough to win Friday against one of the best teams in the league, but they didn't get that extra goal. And today the Wild are they're one of the hottest 8 games with a point. They're absolutely on fire. So you're not going to be allowed to have a bunch of miscues in a game against the Wild. And it only took a couple miscues for the Jets to come out on the losing end of things here.
It's your boy Bruce, very hopeful here, says Jets are the 2019 Blues.
Those Blues, Bruce, those Blues were 32nd in the NHL on January 1st. So yes, they've got some distance to travel if they want to be the 2019 Blues.
I mean, the worry is being the 2021 Blues, because if you remember, the 2020 Blues came out and were the number 1 team in the Western Conference heading into the COVID year before everything blew up, and then actually, crashed out pretty early in the bubble. But then the next year, everything fell apart for them. So they had this last in the league to meteoric rise, winning the cup, were great the entire next year, and then fell off the earth again until re-emerging in the playoffs last
Got
year.
it, Bruce. Got it.
Wanted to bring in a couple questions here, and sorry, folks, there was a disconnect on my mic. I hope that it's better now and sounding better.
You are sounding
This
better.
is a good comment here. This is for me going to be an early, I'm just going to call it Flame and Comfort hot take comment here, where Tracy says, the Jets know what is wrong, but they're not able to correct it yet. This is worth a conversation that we're going to have right now. It's launching a conversation as the Flame and Comfort hot take of our podcast, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. When you get there, you will find it is one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. Folks, you don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside. You can visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. Okay, Ken, what I find fascinating about this is Tracy O is entirely right here. The Jets have been talking about this, and it's not even since the point of game 10. It was before that. Game 10, they basically kind of started to say, well, you know, we still haven't done this. And I know fans were really happy and kind of like whooping it up that the Winnipeg Jets weren't even where they wanted to get yet. And you know, weren't even able to get to their game, and they were still winning the way they were. The problem with that, and I was thinking it at the time, I never said it out loud, but I was thinking of it at the time, that a lot of the times people are like, we're not even playing good yet. When we start playing good, then we're going to take off like a meteor. The problem with that thought process is you're just as likely to tilt and fall off the other side of the high wire and be like, we can't get to our game, and eventually it's going to start costing us. That's where we're at with the Winnipeg Jets. I got to ask the question, like Tracy O says, the Winnipeg Jets know what's wrong. They talk about it openly. They've been talking about it openly for a dozen games or more now. Why can't they seem to correct it when they know exactly what it is they need to correct?
Well, Sean, I think it kind of goes into part of the opening drive for Jim Pattison on Regent. For me, what you mentioned, the Jets are not playing. They know where they're supposed to be. They're not getting there quickly enough. Like today, Urhoff is open. He got to his spot. The Jets knew that they had to cover him, but he was left uncovered, right? The Jets know they need to win the battle in the corner, but they didn't win the battle. So for me, again, I don't think it's a matter of will or not knowing where to be. I think, you know, systematically, the Jets know what it's supposed to look like. And there have been flashes, as Dylan DeMello pointed out to you in your question, Sean, but it's not happening often enough. That inconsistency has been, you talked about erosion, the way that the Jets used to erode how other teams look. Right now, the erosion is happening with the Jets in terms of not being, boa constrictors in the defensive zone. They're not playing that style where they squeeze the life out of their opponent. In some ways, they're having the life squeezed out of them in those situations. So anyways, it's a long-winded way of saying that, again, I don't think this is lack of will, and I don't think it's a matter of not knowing where the Jets are supposed to be. They're not getting to those spots, and they're not bearing down well enough in terms of those defensive responsibilities. It's one thing to be in the right spot. It's another thing to check that opponent, right? So as we talked about before, if you don't have the guy's stick, you don't have him checked. That's the way it goes right now. The Jets are not only not checking the sticks, they're kind of leaving the player open for golden grade A opportunities like the one Urhoff had for the game winner. So again, I think that DeMello is right. It's not, again, no team is pushing the panic button in game 21, but there's also urgency in what Dylan DeMello said. He pulled out the classic Dennis Green today, Sean. He said the Jets are what the record says they are. They are not an elite team right now. For a team that wants to be a contender, a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, you cannot be making these same mistakes on such a frequent basis. Which again, that speaks to the urgency and accountability, but at some point that has to translate into results, or else there are going to be issues that need to be sorted out.
I feel like I've taken too much analysis away from myself because I kind of feel like I nailed this early on, Ken. Like I gotta say, when I talked about the idea of the Winnipeg Jets, and everyone was saying they're up and they're down and they're this and they're that and blah blah. I that's not what I saw. I saw a team that was consistently inconsistent, and that's what it was leading it to. It was a team that has enough chops from the last couple of years, enough scoring, enough good goaltending, enough defensive acumen for over the last couple of years that even though they're not on top of their game, they're able to get over some of the lower end teams, right? But they're not able to get over the higher end ones. Like, this isn't something that's new. I said this 3 weeks ago or longer that this was happening. This is what you should watch out for. Did the Jets beat good teams? Do they beat bad teams? And the answer fairly consistently now has been yes, they beat, and I shouldn't say bad teams, the lower end teams, the struggling teams, the 15 or 16 and down teams. That's where the Jets are making hay right now, and thank goodness they are. And guys like Waiters will pop up and he'll say, well, doesn't it mean something that they beat those teams? Waiters is right. Of course it means something that they beat those teams. It's important. It's extremely important for this Winnipeg Jets team, because if they weren't taking care of business on the nights where their game where it's at has an opportunity to earn them 2 points, they would be long out of this right now. Because I'm not saying that the Winnipeg Jets aren't trying against the top teams. I'm saying right now the style of game that they play is not good enough to get past those upper echelon teams. So the other part about this is Ken, you and I had a conversation early on. And when it was around the 10th game, and what I started to see was exactly what Tracy O is seeing here. There was all this talk of, well, we're not doing quite what we're supposed to be doing, or we're not where we're at yet. And for me, that was so odd. And it was odd for this reason that I've said in the years past, the Winnipeg Jets are the first team to their system. How was it that the Winnipeg Jets, who are year after year after year getting to their system when the rest of the league is just getting the keys and heading out to the car, and the Jets are already 5 blocks down the road driving just perfectly? How is it that that team is now in a position where they know what's going wrong and they can't seem to fix it? And it comes back to the question for me, Ken, that you and I debated. I don't know if it's that they can't seem to fix it. Or that they have to put the things in place. I don't know that this team is able to play like it did last year. And to me, I dare anyone to give me like their thesis on what is missing right now that tells me I'm wrong, right? Because I said this in the beginning. Listen, consistency sometimes just has to do with the fact that when you are consistent, you're able to raise yourself to a certain layer. I think the level, this is a perfect example. When you take a look at guys who continually score 80 points a year versus 90 points a year, those guys all produce it. But the guy who gets 90 points a year or 100 points a year, he's just that much better and that much more consistently either burying his chances or giving himself more opportunities. If you go and watch their game over time, it bears itself out. Over time, the Winnipeg Jets are having flashes like they said they had in this first period here. They're having flashes of being the team that they were, but they can't hold it, right? They pick it up and they've got it, and then they drop it again, and they drop it over and over again. And you have to ask yourself, are the Jets willingly dropping it over and over again? Or is it because what they're trying to do is too heavy to carry for what they are capable of carrying this year? And for me, that all goes back to the speed aspect of it. You talked about it, Ken. They were late to arrive on some plays. They're consistently late to arrive. What it means is there wasn't even a trace, Ken, of the Winnipeg Jets team in this game that last year would just lean on a team and handle the puck and keep it for shift after shift after shift. It is just not there. That what we used to see for what felt to me like 40 minutes of the game typically is happening maybe 5 or something like that. Like, it's not close in my mind. The Winnipeg Jets are not close to being what they were last year. And like, it's not new analysis I'm providing. I'm saying what I've been saying for the most time. I don't think the Jets, as constructed, can play the way that they wanted to last year. They're trying to get, in my mind, they're trying to get back to playing a style of game they are not capable of playing to the level that they played last year, and that tilts things, and this is what that tilt looks like.
Yeah, I mean, again, I understand where you're coming from, and we know it was going to have to look different based on personnel things. So if you can't get up to speed with the personnel that you have, then some tweaks will be required. But again, my other side of it's not an argument, because I am not, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, because I think there's a lot of merit to it, analytically, and there's a lot of some other subjective numbers that suggest the Jets are getting closer to that game in the second 10 games of the block compared to the first 10. But again, that's one sliver of the equation. Again, my biggest concern with the Jets was playing fast enough, but the Jets played fast against Carolina, which actually plays faster than maybe any other team in the NHL except for Colorado, Sean. So I don't know. I mean, today they didn't struggle with the speed element except on the back check, I guess. But again, they need to elevate in a number of areas, and I think picking up the pace is definitely one of them. There's no doubt about that. They're going to need to do a better job. And again, you can't have mistakes that are, kind of fatal mistakes happening all the time and not be concerned about them. I mean, those are facts. I mean, Scott O'Neill expressed concern. I mean, whether it's shorthanded goals or the battles they're not winning enough of. I mean, what we heard when Scott O'Neill took over from Rick Bowness was out the importance of getting better and winning one-on-one battles. And to this point of the season, just past the quarter point, they're not winning enough of those one-on-one battles. Again, we know that St. Louis Blues series, that was rough and tumble and very heavy. The Jets wanted to get a bit heavier, but they've definitely done that at the expense of speed. And it's hurt them in some areas that are not as readily apparent to them as they were last year. I mean, the Minnesota Wild play a tenacious kind of back pressure game like the Jets had played last year. Right now, the Jets aren't getting to that game as often. They're doing it for pockets, but they're not doing it long enough. And that's something that is going to have to change in the middle 20 games here, because if you get to the midway point and they're still playing slow or still having major breakdowns, then Kevin Cheveldayoff's going to have to definitely consider some, personnel changes, right? I mean, that's got to be something that is going to be on the table. And again, we can debate about when that should be happening, but I still think there's some runway to get that sorted out. But the other thing that you can attach to that, Sean, last year to this year, last year we raved about the Jets scoring depth. Yes, they had a great top line, but their second line was very good. Their third line was excellent. And the fourth line had, by the end of the year, Sean, the fourth line had 3 double-digit goal scorers on it, right? I mean, Morgan Barron might have finished just shy of it because he got hurt. But, I mean, Alex Iafallo was a double-digit goal guy. So was Brandon Tanev. Right now this year, even though, again, Cole Koepke is bringing some great speed to that line, he's got 1 assist, I think, so far this year. Morgan Barron is definitely doing his part. Alex Iafallo has done a nice job, but most of his production has come higher in the lineup. So, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at the fourth line. The second and third lines aren't scoring enough. That's a big issue for me in terms of what the Jets need to be better at. It's not just, Cole Perfetti's, just easing his way back into it, and not easing in terms of him. He's trying hard. He's just not producing at the level we expected him to do coming into the year. And now he's playing catch up because of the ankle injuries. So middle six has got to up their game. I mean, Nino Niederreiter's had a great start, but the bulk, and again, Adam Lowry is playing very well. No doubt about that. Showing a different type of leadership today, the kind we've seen before, but fighting one of the toughest guys in the league, trying to get his team going. He's doing his part on the secondary scoring side, but the Jets have not had enough secondary scoring from the middle six grouping. And I mean, this is not a revelation. This is a fact.
Before you got into the secondary scoring, you touched on what I think is actually has the potential to be like the ultimate, the season-long Pristine Roofing wake-up call. And that will be if this continues and the Jets cannot get, and let's say my theory is right, that the Winnipeg Jets are trying to play a system that they just do not have the personnel to play. The ultimate Pristine Roofing wake-up call would be for Kevin Cheveldayoff, and when he would decide decide it's time for me to go make changes to this lineup to try and give the coaching staff the people that they need to be able to execute the game that they're trying to play and cannot seem to get to. You touched on what this game's Pristine Roofing wake-up call would be, and what clearly the head coach wants it to be for his players is that shorthanded goal. And to your point, right? Like it's a 2-on-1 that is a 2-on-1 that gets negated by a hustle by one of the players, and then it ends up being the third man jumping in who does not get covered, does not get followed down the ice, has all the time in the world. And let's just be honest with ourselves, folks. If you get a player who not only has that kind of time, but that runway to get the puck and skate in towards, you have to understand, for a goaltender, every little bit that player skates in, it changes the angle. It's harder for a goaltender to deal with that than it is a player getting that puck. He may have all the time in the world, but if he's standing still in that one spot, the goaltender, it's very easy for him to get, not easy, but it's easier for him to get out and to find that spot to cut down the angle. It's so much harder to do it when a player is given a runway and boom, it's in the back of the net. It's my way of saying, like, some of the goals that were scored on Eric Comrie in this game, probably all three, are not the kind that you look at them like, I know someone up in the press box has said to me, do you think Connor Hellebuyck would have let that one in? It's like, what did we see from Connor Hellebuyck on the glove side in the playoffs last year when players had all kinds of time? No one was stopping that Kaprizov goal the way that he gets the puck there in that spot, because the defenseman does a good job of selling the shot. There's a ton of screen inside, and all of a sudden he moves it over to a guy. You can't cheat that play like that. You have to respect the shot. So Comrie's issue, isn't it, tonight? The Pristine Roofing wake-up call is the lack of the back check. And Ken, that means, of course, it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can get a hold of him at 204-981-6289. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. But I wanted to explore one of these points here that was made, Ken. And I don't know.
Just quickly, great hustle by Perfetti on the first part of the back check, but there was no one in the frame for Brock Faber. Not only did he have all day going down Main Street, there was nobody in the frame even after the shot went in. So that was what Scott O'Neill would have been irate about.
That's what I'm saying is the hustle by Cole Perfetti negates the 2-on-1, totally, right? 2-on-2. And then it ends up being like, okay, we've taken care of it. And then all of a sudden the back end by three guys getting caught down ice. Someone had said something about in here. Sorry, I didn't. I hope you hear this and know who you are. I'm trying to give credit to who it is. I didn't star the comment though, about the Winnipeg Jets going for the President's Trophy last year, doing what they've done over the last number of seasons, and the idea that maybe this team is exhausted, and exhaustion can take different kind of tones, different kind of realities. One of them clearly being that, they're physically tired, right? But I wonder about the idea of that play, because that is the kind of play we rarely saw from the Winnipeg Jets last year. Usually you would have two guys back checking, competing to be the guy who catches that third player. Not like you'd said, no one in the frame at all, Ken. To me, that's a mistake the Jets did not make last year. And I'm wondering if there's maybe a mental exhaustion to being the team that just wins because they do the right thing over and over and over and over and over again over last season, the season before, and the season before that. What's your take on the idea that there may be some exhaustion in the Jets game, just in that, how often can you expect a team to be as close to any other team in the NHL for the last 2 years has been to perfect when it comes to defending, when it comes to details, when it comes to doing the right thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Thanks for finding the comment, by the way, Ken. Who give credit to who that was?
Liquor Beaver.
Oh, I'm not going to say it again. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a level of fatigue, but it can't be exhaustion in game 21, Sean, because championship teams have to play 100 games. So I don't think for 1 second that the Jets, what they know going out in round two, they knew it was only going to get harder. I think we know how hard these guys work in the off season.
Just
So it can't be exhaustion for me.
Hold on one second. And I'm not trying to challenge you this. I'm just trying to direct the conversation in a way that it's like, wouldn't we look at what the Edmonton Oilers have done in the years past at the beginning of the year and then go to the Stanley Cup final after being this team that is something in the playoffs and then looks like what they looked like last year at the beginning of the season, the year before the beginning of the season, right now at the beginning of the season? Like, wouldn't you chalk that up to a team that has proven time and time again that they can look atrocious at the beginning of the year and then look that close to winning the Stanley Cup by the end of the year? Wouldn't you attribute that to a degree to some kind of mental exhaustion, Ken?
Right, but the Jets haven't gone to consecutive Cup finals in Game 6 and 7 in those Cup finals, and that team has 2 of the 3 best players in the world on it, so they can afford to look sluggish at other times.
I'm not saying the Jets can't afford to look sluggish, but I am leaning into the idea that it takes a great amount of mental exertion to be what the Jets have been the last couple of years, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's catching up to them in this moment.
I mean, it could be, but yeah, I mean, it's possible, but it just, there's a lot of teams playing with house money right now, Sean. A lot of these teams that are flying out of the gate, whether it's Utah or some of these other teams, Anaheim, they haven't had to play to the grind, when it gets hard in the second half and down to the last quarter. So the Jets definitely, it takes a lot of energy, but a lot of teams are playing at a great pace in the early going. And again, that means the Jets will have more staying power later because they've gone through the grind. But I don't see this as the Jets kind of being in a malaise or sleepwalking through the start of the year.
Okay, but how do you I'm exploring the idea in my head. I just, put it this way. Let's build this down to a microcosm.
Sure.
And then build it out bigger from that. How do you explain what we saw on that on that power play there, where in the last number of years, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, the guys who not only have been kind of, Adam Lowry is the standard bearer, but those guys have followed behind on the standard bearer. But beyond that, those guys re-upped in Winnipeg because they love the city, but the team, the style it plays. To me, that's an example of guys who are saying, I'm staying here knowing that I've signed up for a team that I need to work my ass off for this to work.
For sure.
And I'm all in. I'm all in on it. So how do you get those guys who are so ultimately all in that they're signing long-term deals to stay and be a part of that and then get cashed out to that degree in that specific play? Like, how does that happen?
Well, sure. So the Kaprizov penalty happened at 16:29 and the goal happens at 18:12. So 17 seconds left in a power play. I don't remember the specifics, but to me, it's the top unit was out there for a while and either, should have gone for a change or stayed out too long. I think it's not as much of a glaring effort thing, even though there's effort involved in trying to back check at the end. And even if you're out for longer than a minute, you still should be able to get back in the frame. But anyways, I think it's a mental error, Sean. That's again, and I'm not dismissing it. It's a bad mental error that shouldn't be happening. But anyways, it's definitely an interesting way to look at it. Anyways, it's
I just think
I'm not saying it's not hard. I think that the Jets have done hard they know how hard it is, so they would have been prepared for it to be hard. I think so.
The last thing I want to be, and I think I've shown that over the years, I never want to be the excuse guy. I never want to be the it's happening because of this. I don't like leaning into the excuses, to be honest. All the people who've talked about injuries at the beginning of this year, to me, I'll use a line I used last time that some people were making fun of me for. That's poppycock. Every team in the league deals with injuries. And I loved how Dylan DeMello, when it was brought up to him, said exactly that. Like, there's a whole bunch of teams that are in a way worse boat than the Winnipeg Jets with injuries right now. Your team isn't the only one that deals with injuries, folks. You must understand that by now. I don't like leaning into the idea of the excuses, and I don't necessarily think this is an excuse. I think it's an explanation. I think that what the Winnipeg Jets did last year and the year before, winning back-to-back Jennings trophies, the way that they defended, I think the amount of time that they played, which takes, I think, just a crazy high degree of mental acuity and focus and effort and all the things that go into, all the little bit of the details and doing the right thing and the ethos behind that and the kind of, the wanting to do the right thing behind that, all that goes into that. I do think it can be mentally exhausting. I was surprised to see the Jets play as good defensively as they did last year based on the previous season. And they took it a step up. Like if my analysis heading into last year would have been, they can't possibly play as good defensively this year as they did last year. And I would have been dead wrong because they upped their game and they got better. But I don't think that's easy to do. I think it's an extreme grind, and I think it's an extreme grind on the body, but more so to be that team. Details require you to be just like mentally there and focused and sharp at all times. And the Winnipeg Jets have been mentally there, focused and sharp for pretty much all of last season, pretty much all the season before that, and for a good half the season before that got to them and they fell off the cliff at the end of it. I think, and it's kind of a contrasting idea. Okay, maybe it's not a contrasting idea. Maybe when you take a team that has had to put so much effort into doing the right things and playing the system the way it has for 2 straight years, and then you brought them into this year, and all of a sudden it's harder to play that system because if I'm right with my theory, the Jets aren't as fast. It's not as easy to get into those spots. It's the system isn't working as well as it did last year because they're not getting to those spots. Then I think that's when the mental slip starts to happen. That's when the mental mistakes that they hadn't made years past starts to come in because it's tired and it's exhausting. And there's a higher degree of difficulty for the mind of the Winnipeg Jets right now in that they're now trying to figure out what's going wrong and how do we get there? Because the last couple of years, it was just there. They came out and it was there and they were good right off the bat and the system was in place and everything worked. It's not working this year. So now the Winnipeg Jets have to add to it not only the idea that they've spent the vast majority of the last 3 seasons being one of the most detailed oriented teams in the league and hyper focused teams. And now you've got to carry that hyper focus on and add to it. Well, how do we figure out what's going on here? Because it's not working the way it's supposed to. I do think it's exhaustion. I don't think it's physical exhaustion. I think it's tough for this team to be detail focused to the degree it's been in years past because they've spent so much energy doing it in the past. And now stacking that on for a 4th year would be hard enough, but upping the degree of difficulty by adding in a team that can't get to those spots as quickly physically as they did last year, I think that is draining mentally.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fair. I mean, my only counter to that would be that as hard as they worked and as good as they were at it, I think that getting bounced in Game 6 last year only fueled them to work harder and put in more work, and knowing how hard it was to just get to the Game 6 of the second round. So I don't think it's to that. I mean, again, I'm not saying it's not. It's definitely taxing. I actually think that it's been more taxing for them, and we're seeing more mistakes in the D zone because they're spending so much less time in the offensive zone. They're not disruptive on the forecheck. They're not creating that chaos. They're spending more time. They're the old do unto others as you would want them to do to you. Yeah. While other teams are pushing back on that now. They're sick of the Jets forcing them to play defense. They're forcing the Jets to defend, and now they haven't been as good at it this year. So I think it can be a combination of the two things. And again, I just think that this is a team that knows it's got to be better, but until they show it, I mean, that question will linger for a while.
I want to get to where they are in the standings. It's a conversation that we have to have. First, the Winnipeg Jets are definitely a team shooting for growth the way things are going right now. And you can shoot for growth with Cambrian Wealth. Grow your wealth today to reach tomorrow's big goals. Cambrian's wealth team can assist. Invest in your future self your way. Our pals at Cambrian Wealth give straight up investing advice, and you can actually understand and help you make a strong financial play to get there. You can book an appointment at cambrian.mb.ca and go check it out. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out while you're at it?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Okay, I talked about the degree of difficulty going up with the Jets and adding in the idea that they've got to kind of figure out what's not working compared to how it worked last year, why they're not able to get the 60-minute effort they were getting last year. Add to this now the idea that for the first time in a long time, the Winnipeg Jets have to kind of look in the standings and be cognizant of, okay, we got to catch ourselves now. There's not the room to maybe fall off. What is it? They've now lost 6 of their last 9 games. Is that what it is, Ken?
Well, they were 9-3, and now they're 12-9. So
yeah, I'm not going to even
3-6, right? Yeah,
in real time there.
No,
okay,
yeah, 3-6.
There you go. Good for you, Ken.
Doing my best here. Hey, one of your daughters told me her favorite class was math. You better up your math game. Let's go.
Well, listen, she's got that math game because of her old man. Let's tell you. Let's not get too out of pocket there. I want to explore the idea of what you think it's going to look like for this team when it comes to dealing with where they are in the standings, because let's not panic if you're Winnipeg Jets fans. I mean, the Jets have a couple games in hand compared to a lot of the teams around them, and they're really not that far out, right? But if things keep going in this direction, it doesn't take long to fall very far. And the problem with that is that once you fall to a certain degree, you don't just need, 1 or 2 teams to falter, right? Like, remember last year when the Winnipeg Jets were going for the President's Trophy and I went on the Alexander Ovechkin run and I saw that team and I said, mark my word. What's the first thing I said when I came back, Ken? Mark my words, the Winnipeg Jets are winning the President's Trophy, because I can see that team. They're not focused on that and they'll fall out of that. It's one team that they needed to kind of fall apart. The Dallas Stars were kind of coming up. The Jets beat them in that one game. There you go. When you're not dealing with a lot of teams, it's a lot easier. But if you fall too far, now you not only have to be really good, but you need some teams around you to be bad. So what do you think? How would it affect the Winnipeg Jets when they find themselves now in a situation they haven't been in a long time, and that's having to worry about being below the playoff line, especially, Ken, because next Thursday is American Thanksgiving, that artificial line we talk about, that the teams below it very often do not make the playoffs after that. It's an artificial line, and I don't think the Jets are waving the white flag if they're not above that line by then. But that said, it's a concerning canary in the coal mine kind of moment.
Yeah, sure. I mean, by points percentage, the Jets still would be ahead of Utah at 571-68, but that's really, really leaning into the percentile points here. But I mean, the Jets got to be better. I mean, we know there's a bunch of really good teams in the league, and 3-6 is not sustainable, no matter what kind of injuries you're dealing with or schedule issues or anything else. Sean, in the next 2 weeks, the Jets have back-to-back games on the weekends. So that means their goaltending will be pushed even further. I mean, Thomas Milic is a great story, but unless the Jets do something else, Milic is going to have to play in one of those games in each of the next 2 weekends. So that means the degree of difficulty is getting higher. I mean, Milic may end up playing great. He's had a great start to the year. And as I mentioned, full value of getting this opportunity, but it's uncharted territory. So in terms of their mentality, it's interesting, right? Sean, all of last year, even at 15-1 and everything else, Jets were very laser focused. And Scott O'Neill even joked about it. You guys will be sick of hearing me. I'm a broken record. They do their debrief and then they move on. It seems like some of the games this year have seemed to linger into the next one, I think. I mean, again, I don't think I'm making a crazy assumption by thinking that, but I think that the Jets have not been quite as laser focused as they were last year when it came to turning the page. But I think that's due more to the fact that they have other things that they got to sort out that were kind of just happening. I'm not saying they were on autopilot, because they had to work hard to get to autopilot. But right now there's so many tweaks within the game that they're trying to fix. It's more difficult to just leave the last game in the past, because there's lessons to learn from that game. So
good point.
like I think that Dylan DeMello kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, so would the Jets prefer to be above and be in the top 8? Of course, they would, but they're not going to be folding the tent if they're 2 points out of the playoff spot either. I mean, this is a team that has, earned the benefit of the doubt on a lot of fronts, but now they're also pushing to kind of get to another place. So, I mean, it's a great test for them. I mean, that's the beauty of, I mean, when you want to be Josh Morrissey said it countless times, they want to be coached like they're an elite team. Well, right now they're going to be pushing, they're going to push one another. That's the one thing about accountability, but they've got a lot of ground to cover, Sean, that they didn't have in the past. Again, last year, the Jets were essentially with the 15-1 start. They didn't want to talk about it, but we could. By banking those 30 points in the first 16 games, they basically locked up their playoff spot by November.
Yeah.
So this year, that means it's going to be tooth and nail right to the wire, barring a, 10 or 12 or whatever, 7, 8, 9 game winning streak. And right now the Jets just got to focus on their next outing. I mean, they're going to face a Washington Capitals team that had a bunch of other people wondering, where they were at. And suddenly Ovechkin's a point a game player and they're rolling again too. So there's a lot of interesting things. Somebody mentioned the Panthers in the chat room. I mean, the Panthers are missing 2 of their best players in Alexander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk. So again, I guess you could argue the Jets are missing one of their best players in Hellebuyck. I get it. And now Sean, Neil Pionk, I mean, this has the potential of being a big injury for the Winnipeg Jets.
Huge.
Again, he had an uneven start to the year, but this is a top 4 minute guy. And I mean, if he's going to, yes, Scott, the report was it's day to day, but I mean, Sean, you've been in that situation before. It sure looked like his groin was bothering him. And what do we know about groin injuries? Groin
they drag on forever.
If you don't take a seat, we know Neil has a high pain tolerance and threshold, much like Blake Wheeler did. But groin injury is not something you can play through when you're playing 22 minutes a game. So
yeah, and nor should you, because then you just keep it going and going, and then you deal with it all year. And folks, if you've ever skated before, it affects your push, your ability to get that first step. So it's going to make you slower to the puck. That's not what they need. This is one of those things that you sit them out and you get it right. So that they can come back into the line and be the best version of themselves. It's just what you have to do, Ken.
I'm super curious if it's going to be Solomonson that gets the recall, or if they're going to roll with Miller and Shen and then just call up Cale Clegg or Ville Heinola or someone with more experience. But it could be an interesting opportunity to get a look at Solomonson for a little bit of time if Pionk is going to miss a couple games.
Yeah. Just a couple of comments I wanted to highlight here that I thought were sorry. Oh, oops. So here we go. Let's bring in, and I'm just going to take my glasses.
Scott Johnston
says, I'm blaming the management team that brought in all the old guys when everyone else is getting younger. They are like last year's Nashville Predators. The one thing that I thought about this that was that I was kind of thinking along the same lines, Ken, is the idea that, I hadn't even considered the idea, but imagine if the Winnipeg Jets missed the playoffs this year after re-upping all the guys they've re-upped. That too would seem a little bit like the Nashville Predators, because if you take a look at the Predators, you're like, what does this team do now? They've got guys signed to contracts that carry forward for a really long time and make it maybe a little bit difficult to move guys. Now, the counter to that would be, Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuyck, Adam Lowry. Those guys are still young enough that I'm telling you right now, if there was a team out there, if you were decided that you were going to trade Adam Lowry, you'd have suitors lining up with their hands in the air and you'd be getting a great return. But the kind of the idea of getting older is something that doesn't seem to have worked so far this year. And then from Liquor Beaver making a great comment to this is the fastest turn that I've ever heard with this take before. Says another possibility is Arnie has lost the room, proven track record of doing just that in Columbus, history repeating itself. There's so many wrong things with this statement here. One is that all coaches are said to have lost the room by the time they leave, and all coaches have been hired and fired, which means you could level that accusation at every single one of them. Scott Arniel would not be unique in being a coach to lose a room. And because he did one time doesn't mean that that's the case now. So history repeating itself, that's a ridiculous statement. But Arnie has just come from winning the President's Trophy with his team, and they're just kind of bumping into the first little bit of a problem. Like, they were in third place just a couple days ago, right? And to go from that, yeah, I know it's a hard swing, but as Ken said, the points line up a little bit differently. But man, oh man, to go from this team being, fairly okay to he's instantaneously lost the room, that would, I'll tell you right now, if the Jets were in the position they're in right now, Ken, and they had actually lost the room, that would say something about the character of the Winnipeg Jets players, that they would have the success they've had under Scott Arniel over not just last year, but the years before that. And then to turn on it that quickly, man, oh man, that would say something about that team.
First time we're giving out double pristine roofing wake-up calls in an episode.
And beyond that, that's the
Let's
kind
go.
of, you need to cover up. You need to cover up comments like that. Like, I'm going to cover up this big shoebox head with the headband and make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's go. I made Glenn and Jonah at Myers Drugs wait a little bit long for that one, but I can tell you this: you'll never lose the room if you go and check out Myers Drugs, because they will take care of all your pharmaceutical needs, all your health food needs, all your supplement needs. And as you know, they deliver everywhere across the city. So there is nothing but upside when you deal with Myers Drugs. Make sure you check them out and tell them that Kenny and Renny sent you. Okay, Ken, time for the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. You got anything?
Got to be Lowry's fight. I know some people don't love fighting or like fighting, and specifically quote unquote staged fighting. But for me, Jets had a strong first. They had a, malaise-ish second. And when the captain of your team goes over and taps one of the toughest guys in the NHL on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I think I'd like to have a quick dance. Would you be interested?" And the other guy obviously says, "Interested? Yes, I'm interested." Again, some people don't appreciate this type of leadership, but I still do. And I think it was an important part of the game. No, it didn't. The Jets did not respond in that way. But for me, a willingness for Adam Lowry to put him, especially with the way Lowry's been playing, to go at it with a heavyweight. Again, Marcus Foligno, this isn't Adam Lowry fighting some big goon that has no role. I mean, Marcus Foligno's had a lot of impact in games against the Jets over the years. Huge. I like his choice of a dance partner. I like that. I'm not surprised Foligno took the fight, and I'm not surprised that it was a quick fight, but it was heated. A lot of blood on the hand of Foligno, and Lowry certainly, was more than a willing combatant there.
Okay, if people have ever been in kind of that culture before when they do fight, I'm going to tell you something. If you take a punch from a guy, like if you take a certain level of punch that hits you, it leaves an imprint on you like a tattoo, not just like fists and knuckles and stuff like that, on your mind. Once you've been hit a certain way by a guy before, you never forget that kind of stuff, right? And dealing with that person going forward, you never forget that. If I remember correctly, Ken, didn't Marcus Foligno drop the Superman punch on Adam Lowry and get him really, really good a number of years back?
He definitely had the punch, and I can't think of anybody else that it would have been other than Lowry who would have been fighting. I'm pretty sure it was
Lowry. That's what I was thinking. But that was, if I remember correctly, the biggest shot.
Oh, no, Brendan Dillon. It's Brendan Dillon.
Brendan Dillon. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yes. Okay. So that kind of takes some steam out of this, and I'll just move on from that because I had a different.
It was Dillon.
Ken. I will say this. I am always very, very quick to point out when I think what fights happen. And because I know a lot of people don't agree with me with the fighting culture, a lot of people want it out. I'm not one of those people. I think it has a huge effect on games when things like that happen. And I'm always right here pointing out when you do see a noticeable bump for a team after a fight happens. There wasn't the noticeable bump after this one. So this is one for the get fighting out of hockey crowd, in that this really did not do anything to stir the Jets. I will say this. There was a play. It was from behind the net, a pass out front that the Minnesota Wild made, and it was about to set up a scoring chance in tight. And KC had collapsed. Kyle Connor had collapsed and stole the puck and turned it up ice after that. We had pointed out he was one of the guys who was not there for the back check on the shorthanded goal. I wanted to make sure that, like I said, if we're pointing out people for doing sometimes what we believe is the wrong thing, we sure better be ready to point out the people for doing the right things. I thought that was a really good play and really well deserving of the We've Got You Covered play of the game. Of course, brought to you by the Kenny and Renny OGs at the Johnston Group. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? You need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And Ken, that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, apologies for the folks who aren't going to like something going to an opponent or an opposing team. I think the save of the game was made by Jonas Brodin, Sean, to be honest. It's the best save of the game. I mean, he took a puck off the goal line. I'm not sure it would have counted. I thought maybe Gabe Velarde batted it with his hand. I'm not 100% sure. Might have hit his body or pants. But either way, Brodin took away what looked like a sure goal with just over 7 minutes into the second period. And honestly, Wallstad was rock solid.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of highlight reel saves for Wallstad. A lot of big and boring from him, and that's a compliment to Wallstad. And again, Comrie was fine in the game, no doubt, but I didn't have a ton of crazy grade A stops that he made either. I think Brodin's stop or goal prevention was the keg save of the game for me.
There was one by Wallstead where it was a pass to the middle of the ice, and I can't remember who took the shot. And it was Taves. And Taves took that shot, and it was over the pad. It's, what do they call it? The 8-inch shot, Ken, that's right over the pad and right under the glove, right on the inside of the post. And Wallstead made the save look easy. So I thought like that was one of those ones that could have been there. The other thing, I'll say that after I'm done with this. That's my hashtag the keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what Ken and I think, though. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, that would be Mike Pajic. Mike Pajic, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And I just wanted to kind of say this and get this out there because one of the things we're going to have to watch as it goes on here is an Eric Comrie who has really never had the starter's crease in the NHL for the amount of time that he's going to have it here in Winnipeg. So we kind of need to see how he responds to that. And I know there's a perception out there of people who think that I don't give Connor Hellebuyck the credit that he deserves because I don't agree with people on the level of I wouldn't even say the level of importance. I do think there's a lot of credit he's given that is credit to the point that it takes away from the rest of the Winnipeg Jets team and how they play defensively. So I know that there's a perception out there. Can I believe you are one of the people who has that perception when it comes to me? I would say this. What I saw tonight, there was a couple times there were shots towards Eric Comrie and there were rebounds that kind of went off him and went up into the air. Those kind of come up and then they just land down in front of you. Those are dangerous rebounds to give, right? Because what it does is it gives time for the opposition team to see where the puck is going and time to get there. And at the very least, what it creates is a scenario for your defense where now you are in a dog tooth fight to keep the opposition from the front of the net and get them away from that puck. So while I take a look, and I said it earlier in the show, I take a look at all three of the goals that were scored on the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I don't think that any of those are ones that would have been stopped outside of Connor Hellebuyck and by Connor Hellebuyck as well. I think Dylan DeMello said it earlier on when I asked him about, the confidence that they may be missing without Connor Hellebuyck in the net. He's like, Connor Hellebuyck wasn't winning that game when we're not scoring any goals tonight. I thought that was an important admission as well. But I do think handling the puck, there's a step down from when you go to Eric Comrie compared to Connor Hellebuyck, which I think a lot of people who hate to see Connor Hellebuyck handle the puck are going to be surprised by me saying that. But I think there's a step down in that regard. I think there was a couple of those shots that weren't handled as cleanly as were handled by Connor Hellebuyck. All those things add up in the end. I saw a difference between the two goaltenders tonight. I don't think it made a difference in them winning or losing tonight. But I will say this, I'm interested to see where this goes and where Eric Comrie's game goes based on the exhaustion that he faces or just the workload that he faces going forward without Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah, you bet. And just a couple quick things. I mean, the early reports are that the Jets are, happy to roll with Thomas Milic and Eric Comrie. But I mean, again, we're trying to keep our eyes on and ears open on this situation. I got a note this morning, and we'll continue to look into it. But Chris Drieger, a Winnipegger who ended the year with the Jets as their third goalie and spent 5 games with the Manitoba Moose, he mutually agreed to terminate his contract in the KHL earlier this morning, Sean. So again, it may be a coincidence, but it's just something to keep an eye on over the next little while here. I mean, again, he's someone who fit in nicely. Could the Jets be looking for a little bit more experience? That's a possibility. And again, not certain what to think about this because we saw Michael Hutchinson, who lives in Winnipeg year-round now and is a former Jet. Michael Hutchinson's gear was in the hallway today. So I don't know if it was still here from the practice during the week or if it means he may be coming for further work and practice or whatever. But right-handed goal sticks are not very prevalent around these parts. So again, just all things we're going to be keeping our eyes on moving forward. But the biggest thing we'll be keeping our eyes on before Wednesday when you're at that game for Wednesday night hockey for Sportsnet, Sean, is, what's the status of Neil Pionk, and will the Jets be calling up either Elias Solomonson or someone else from the Manitoba Moose who have been red hot? Some folks have been asking about Alexander Georgiev. He is being terminated to go to the KHL. I don't think that he would be someone the Jets would be looking at right now.
Okay. All right. The good notes. Good segment at the end of the show there. News and notes by our main man, Kenny.
Trying for the second intermission. And sorry, last thing, and I won't go long here, but just short. Every time I see Matt Zuccarello, it makes me think of the Rangers series I covered in the early 2010s or 2012, 14. That made me think of Larry Brooks. I know I mentioned it on CJOB, but I don't think I ever mentioned it on our show, Sean. Larry Brooks passing away a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Tough news for the industry. A guy was a legend. I know only some of you young people only know him from battles with Tortorella, but yeah. Larry's someone who is an exceptional reporter, dogged journalist. He's got the pit bull like you do, Sean. I enjoyed spending, I wouldn't say I was ever close with Larry, but I enjoyed spending time with him. I love talking hockey with him. And the thing that you knew about Larry, when you covered a playoff series, and I'll use Rick Nash as an example. I walked into the room. Larry was sitting down in the stall beside Rick Nash, and he had his full and undivided attention. He was respected by the players, and he did the job the way the job is supposed to be done. So a belated RIP. Spoke with some of my friends who were at the memorial last Sunday, and apparently it was incredibly well done. So I just wanted to mention that. I know it's a little bit late, but never too late when you mention someone who has an impact on you and your career.
No doubt. Now, I never met Larry. Make that clear. Never met him once. I'll say this though: I had massive respect for the cojones that he had. So many people know him from those battles with Tortorella. I'll just say this: all the people who talk tough outside of this and criticize journalists for asking questions and stuff like that, the vast majority of them would crumble and walk away with their tail between their legs in situations like that, and you would never see them again. And Larry was the kind of guy who did his job and said, asked himself, am I doing the job right? Am I doing this properly? Am I doing it journalistically, which you just alluded to, Ken? And the answer from what I saw was always yes, which just meant that when he had things like guys telling him to get the F out of there and stuff like that, he just walked back in there the next day and he kept being a pro, because that's exactly what he was, someone to be admired to the ultimate. Great for bringing that up, Ken. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm off very soon on the road for this Jets road trip. I'll be broadcasting 3 of them on this trip here. So it's going to be interesting to see where they take this thing. I'm sure you're all going to be there along for the ride. And if you do appreciate being along for the ride and listening in on the conversations happening in this space and taking part in them the way that you do, we would implore you to appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent, Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Kenny and Renny OGs and the Johnson Group, and of course the fine folks at the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We will reconvene and do this the next time the Jets hit the ice. Talk to you then.